a female perspective is like the idea of using a dildo on a guy that supposedly also has vibration for her. For whatever reason, that spot is never in the right place for the girl, unless that dildo is in a different place entirely.
Right.
Because if it's like in a strap-on situation, most of the ones that I've tried thus far, the vibration's here. Like against my pubic bone. Not fun. Not sexy. It needs to move down like an inch or two. Not against the pubic bone. It's really not fun to have that vibrate for me. So I wonder if you've been seeing like any modifications of toys that are meant for people to play together like that.
Right. What I'm finding too is that finally within the last 5 to 7 years, sex toy companies are starting to utilize sex educators in their products. Exactly. Somehow the light bulb went off where they thought, oh, well, let's get the input of people who actually have some knowledge on both the body, the anatomy, pleasure zones, erogenous zones, secondary erogenous zones, and so what they're finding is that
what their clients are saying?
And what their clients are saying, what people are reporting back, and we're finally getting to a point where I think they're taking in the suggestions. Products like the Aneros prostate stimulators, they actually were used with people, and they took the feedback, and they also had doctors who were giving anatomical information as to what would be the angle of the rectum and what would be the best curvatures to the toys and things like that. Instead of a person having this brainstorm in their living room, which is fantastic, it's great to have a few extra people who are professionals, who are knowledgeable to help with that. So I agree with what you're saying, because I've heard a lot of people say that it's the stimulation's in the wrong place, or the G-spot stimulator, it's too deep, or it's too shallow, or it's not really hitting the right spot. And one thing I saw too, as well as which is another Screaming O product, they actually have it's almost like a Wii vibe. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. It looks almost like a U, and it will go inside the vagina up against the G-spot, and this portion clamps onto her vulva and goes over the clitoris, and so she has this dual kind of clamming of the two spots, and there's vibration. Well, they came up with an adjustable one, so you can actually make one side a lot longer, one side shorter. You can do it this direction, so they can manipulate it to...
Not all vaginas and clitorises are in the exact same place.
Exactly.
They're all different. Not all girly parts are the same.
Which is something I tell guys too as well, because...
Not all guy parts are the same.
Same thing. And your penis might do wonders for one person and not for others, so you shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket and say, oh my God, I didn't make her come, so I can never be a person to ever be pleasurable for a partner, because the next person might think you're fantastic. So it really just depends, and people can't get down on themselves when it comes to sex. We have all had experiences where couldn't get it up, or we couldn't orgasm, or we picked up our partner and we slipped, fell off the bed. We have to laugh at ourselves. We have to enjoy it.
On the headboard, whatever.
These
things happen. Spiders in the bed.
Yeah.
Kneecap on the nose.
Kneecap on the nose. Yeah, you got a bloody nose. Yeah.
Bloody nose. There you go. That's rough.
Yeah. Of all the weird things he does, that's the thing. That's when he got hurt. Was the kneecap in the nose.
I have a friend who tells me a great story. He says, he was using a taser as part of his play with a woman sexually, and somehow the knee hit the elbow, the taser fell off, and it started falling. He didn't want it to hit her, so he reaches out to try to grab it, and it just starts tasing him. And, thankfully, it ended up with just a funny experience, but you never know what can happen. You have to laugh about these things.
Indeed.
So, but some people internalize it, and they feel like, I'm the worst lover, I can never be successful, I can never please somebody, and they really hold on to these, what they perceive as failures that I just perceive as learning experiences. And just that simple reframe of how you perceive and look at it can make the world of difference for someone sexually.
I agree. Is there any advice, general advice, that you would give to men or women regarding sex or their own sexual pleasure, or how to approach it?
I'm a big believer in research and reading and following up with your own sort of investigations. And I know that sounds a little clinical and technical, but what I mean is get some books. Read up on men's sexual health. Read up on women's sexual health. I was always the person that was reading the Cosmo magazine, because there's a lot of great info in there that helped teach me about women. Vice versa, women should also be reading men's magazines, and I think that if people had they have to self-teach, especially in this day and age where we have these abstinence-only programs that are, most kids are receiving in this country, and with the lack of sexual education that a lot of kids are getting, in teens and adults, we have to self-educate. And I think that if people can just muster up the courage to reach out and go to Amazon or go to that sex store and just gather the information to learn, because we can self-teach ourselves incredible things. You can become a fantastic lover with just a couple simple books and a little bit of trial and error, and hopefully with a partner who's gives good feedback and communication. So I really feel like we have a lot of potential.
I agree. There's a lot of wonderful books out there, and anybody who's watching, if you have topics that you're interested in looking up, or you just want a quick list of books, then send me an email.
My textbook in my class that I used, which I think is one of the best books that's ever been written when it comes to just the encompassed view of sexuality, not so specific and detailed, but more so of an overview. It's called The Guide to Getting It On by Paul Joannidis, and it is just fantastic. It's great for the layperson. It opens you up to different chapters on different experiences, whether it's female sexuality, male sexuality, sexual expression. It's really just phenomenal, and people, I encourage couples to read it together, read a couple chapters, and then get together and talk about them. I've had people do that, and they've really grown in their relationships and also with their sexual confidence and the questions to even ask their partners, because a lot of times people don't ask, their partners, did that feel good? Mm-hmm. What would you like for us to do differently to make it feel even better? What can we try that you have not tried? What kind of fantasies are locked up in that mind of yours? And we just avoid these simple questions that can open up doors. I mean, these doors that have infinite possibilities for us, for sexual expression and enjoyment.
Yeah, and at this point, I mean, there's really no reason for you to stay in a relationship for months or years or your life without talking about this and without exploring this and without, getting to these topics with your partner. Because, I'm sure you might remember who I'm talking about. I'm not going to name him, but I remember hearing him lecture, and he was talking about his wife, when they were like 5 years away from retirement, finally kind of said, "So, do you have any fantasies we haven't explored yet?" And they had been, at that point, had been married for 20, 25 years. And although, yes, he actually did have some very particular fantasies about things that he wanted to explore that she actually found out later that she wasn't really hip on. But to wait that long to say, do you have any sexual fantasies you want to explore, seems sort of sad.
It does. I mean,
to be in a relationship that long and not go there.
If my fantasy was to jump out of a plane while having sex with a woman, and I waited till I was 70 to do it, to tell that woman, I might have missed my opportunity. I might have missed the boat on that one. So it's definitely, I mean, to me, those are first 3 to 6 months. I mean, when you're dating somebody, you have to bring out all this stuff, because that's what we should be doing in our relationships and our dating. We should be finding out the real information, not just what we want to put out and what we want to hide. And we should be asking the tough questions, because in the end, we only have one life to live.
Yeah.
It should be a healthy, fun, exciting sexual life if we can.
Absolutely. And really, it's the same formula, whether you're monogamous or poly or serial monogamy or whatever type of relationship you're in, and it doesn't matter whether you're heterosexual or homosexual or anything else. Communication is communication.
So true, and it's amazing, because with all the judgment that I think maybe the more mainstream community has, and the more mainstream monogamous community has with the erotic minorities that are out there, they actually have so much more knowledge about some basic sexual skills like communication. I mean, you go into the kink community, the BDSM community, the swing community, the open relationship poly community, they are fantastic for the most part with communication and asking these questions, and the
consent
and yeah, the check-ins and the negotiations. Yeah. And it's unfortunate, because it's actually the more mainstream culture that's sexually oppressed that has the difficulty with talking about these, which I believe are cornerstones of having a sexual relationship, a healthy, fun, exciting sexual relationship.
And to understand that to have a healthy sex life is to have a healthy life. Like I was saying earlier, that I get students who ask about, if they masturbate too much, does that mean they won't be able to have children later? If they masturbate too much, If it's a woman, will this lead to cervical cancer? Guys, will this lead to prostate cancer somehow? Or testicular cancer. And they're really concerned that somehow, if they have sex or have too much sex or have too much of the wrong sex, whatever that is, that somehow this is going to lead to health deficiencies later on.
Right.
When in reality, the opposite tends to be true, that by having a healthy sex life, you have a healthy life. That there are health benefits to having good sex.
Lots of health benefits, and a lot of these questions I think come from just centuries of us having these myths and these sexual beliefs that were put out into society that were completely false. That people just jump on the bandwagon because a professional or a doctor or a person who wrote a book said they were true, and the masturbation will cause blindness or hairy palms or.
I actually have one of the books that
it's
tells you all the horrible things that will happen to you if you masturbate.
And it's amazing how these things still live on.
Put out in the 1940s. It's horrible.
The legacy just lives on.
Yeah.
With a number of issues, and there are a couple of good resources out there for kids and teens and young adults to seek out actual real information. Some people aren't comfortable going to the sex toy shop or the bookstore or even purchasing that material, but places like Scarletine, Go Ask Alice, these are two excellent websites that have top-notch clinicians and educators who are constantly writing the accurate, real answers to these basic questions. And you can type in search engines with your question, cervical cancer, masturbation, boom, you'll see all the questions with those two keywords in the question. And it's really helpful. I mean, I go there also too to show my students. I'll ask them to give me a couple topics, and we'll type it in, and I'll show them, and boom, all of a sudden they see that it's that easy. And they can do it from their phone nowadays. There's actually apps too that they can just click.
And again, more reason why we need to continue funding for Planned Parenthood, because I know Planned Parenthood funds some of these sites that provide information, and that's a large part of what Planned Parenthood does, is providing real information.
Yeah. It's really sad because Planned Parenthood is on the front lines of education, and they're really just taking a beating.
Yeah.
And it's so unfortunate. People are making them out to be these abortionists when in fact, the abortion money comes from the private sector and donations. And they're really taking a hit at, even in Orange County, down where I teach, they have cut their programs to do college education. So they used to come to classrooms, do educational presentations. They no longer do that. And they now are going to be cutting they used to give you had a brown bag policy where they would put 20 condoms in a bag. You don't
and
have
hand
to
it to you. No questions asked.
They don't have the funding
can't do it.
for condoms.
You have to give out free condoms anymore.
So that's really a tragedy because, a number of students on their anonymous questionnaires will say, that I've encountered, will say, if I don't have the condoms there, I won't purchase them because I'm too embarrassed to.
Right.
So they'll just go with no condoms.
Or they don't have funds. You're a student, especially high school. You don't have a lot of discretionary funds, really.
And I've actually seen condoms at 99-cent stores. I mean, they're good condoms.
Right.
They work. They're cheap. People just have this idea that, they're from a 99-cent store. I can't use them. They're probably going to break. But condoms go through an incredible amount of testing, electrical testing. They blow them up. They fill them with water. They do all these different types of air testing. It's really amazing how strenuous and rigorous the testing is to see if they're effective. And if even one condom shows any type of tear or not up to the standards, they'll throw out the entire batch that was made with that latex. I mean, we're talking thousands of condoms they'll just dump because one wasn't up to par. So they really
take that chance.
Yeah, they really do a good job of and research shows that it's human error.
Very often.
Majority of the time, it's not pinching the tip. It's the condom slipped off because you weren't direct, or maybe you didn't feel it slipping off. Which, by the way, with these cock rings, if you put the condom on, you put the cock ring over it, it'll
keeps the condom from slipping off.
It's the perfect. I don't know if the guys
it's the perfect pairing.
I don't know if the guys out there have ever done this, but sometimes when you're having sex and you've been drinking or doing drugs or you've been partying or whatever it may be, the erection isn't that strong, and you sometimes are reaching down to see if is that thing still on. I mean, you're kind of feeling to see if it's there, and if you have this cock ring, you don't have to go down the feel. I mean, as long as you know there's a big buzzy thing that's wrapped around your penis, you know that the condom's on there too.
It's still there.
Yeah.